The Holy Gospel according to St. Luke, the 4th chapter. Then Jesus, filled with the power of the Spirit, returned to Galilee, and a report about him spread throughout all the surrounding country. He began to teach in their synagogues and was praised by everyone. When he came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up, he went to the synagogue on the Sabbath day, as was his custom. He stood up to read, and the scroll of the prophet Isaiah was given to him. He unrolled the scroll and found the place where it was written, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim release to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to let the oppressed go free, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." And he rolled up the scroll, gave it back to the attendants, and sat down. The eyes of all in the synagogue were fixed on him. Then he began to say to them, "Today this scripture has been fulfilled in your hearing." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Christ.
Well, good afternoon. It's a joy and delight to be with you, and I'm reminded of the place in the Psalm where it says that it's good for brethren to live together in peace. Well, justice and only justice you shall pursue, so that you may live and occupy the land the Lord your God is giving you. Do you remember Occupy? 10 years ago, university students in California started by protesting financial exigencies after the Great Recession, including a 32% hike in tuition. The slogan, "Occupy everything, demand nothing," began a nonviolent quest for greater equity. Occupying university halls, financial centers, and city squares spread globally. And the lack of coherent demands was cited as a subversive tactic to engage the deeper conversation that is essential to transformation. Deuteronomy insists that only justice will permit people to live and occupy the land that God has given. What does that mean, to live and occupy the land? The book of Deuteronomy is a framework for Moses' people, teaching them how to live in a settled place after 40 years of desert wandering. That book is also an ongoing reminder to God's people to live righteously if they want to stay there. It's even a promise that returning to God's ways of justice will let exiles return home. To occupy can have both negative and positive resonance. The word itself comes from Latin roots that mean to grasp. In Shakespeare's day, it was slang for sex. Occupation can be as constructive as a vocation or livelihood, as innocent or vacuous as a pastime, or as dark as tyranny over cities, nations, and peoples. The Hebrew word behind it is also translated possess or inherit. Occupying the land originally meant making a home and building a just community in the place God had led this people. It's a remembrance of the first human home in Eden. The arc of the biblical narrative continues to urge God's people toward the vision of home where all may dwell in peace because justice reigns. You know the images. Lions and lambs rest comfortably together. Children play in proximity to adders and serpents. Egyptians and Syrians and Israelis seek wisdom and peace together as peoples of God. Today, occupying, possessing, or inheriting the land must recall us to a deeper understanding of that vision, grounded in the garden, seeking the light and wisdom of God in the cosmos of creation. The moral arc of the universe urges us forward, seeking home for all. Our challenge is clearly and urgently about humanity's continued existence on this fragile earth, our island home. We have been destroying each other since Cain and Abel. Today, we are destroying the garden and its ability to support human life. Our understanding must expand toward the global measure of life itself. This is the only land, the only planet God has given us. Only justice will permit or bless our continued presence here. Living justly begins with knowing ourselves beloved of God. Jesus hears that at his baptism, and in this season it resonates through all of Epiphany. You are my beloved, and in you I am well pleased. God has breathed the same loving gift of life into every creature on this planet. And justice is most deeply about right relationship with self, with neighbor, with God, in actions and attitudes. Justice is grown and nurtured and structured in community. The Deuteronomist urges us to pursue justice. Micah frames it as doing justly, loving mercy, and walking humbly with God. For God alone is just. We strive and muddle along toward the fullness of right relationship, and we have others around us to remind us and recover us and turn us back in a godlier direction. Jesus claims that journey when he reads Isaiah in his hometown synagogue. And then he challenges the community to do and love and walk together toward God's vision of justice. Today, right now, in your hearing, what does it look like right here and right now? This week of prayer, and I will claim those 8 days, are a vision of completeness in creation, of God's vision of justice. In this week, we remind ourselves of loving and doing and walking together. The Indonesian Christian community who put this year's liturgy and study materials together gives us a remarkable example. 10% of Indonesians are Christian. 86% of them are Muslim. The nation itself claims a vision of unity in diversity, parallel to Paul's vision of one body with many parts and different gifts, each helping to build up that body. The working principles of Indonesia's vision are a model of the kind of justice that's needed to occupy the land fruitfully. And they echo the justice proclaimed in the Abrahamic traditions: belief in one God, a just and civilized humanity, the unity of the nation, representative democracy guided by inner wisdom, and social justice for all. Indonesia is no more perfect or just than this nation or any other, yet there is an aspirational national map for the journey. The Christian bodies represented here use a very similar map, and it is the larger vision of all the Hebrew prophets. Like Indonesia, we claim God's dream of peace with justice for all in shalom or salam. We seek a godly home for all. The divisions among us are a scandal and an opportunity. The fruit of hard conversations about our differences and divisions can lead us to value our diverse gifts and to seek ways to partner on the journey toward the peaceable kingdom. We advocate together. We prod our legislators to build more just systems of good news for the poor, for healing the blind and liberating the oppressed, and returning prisoners to communities of healing and reconciliation. Our respective communities often work together to serve individuals and communities directly, like the asylum seekers moving across our border. They have brought us closer to each other and to the migrants, working in the shelter together, working to answer the emerging needs. It's helped some of us to remember that we are all migrants on this earth, seeking a home of justice where we might dwell together in peace. This nation and this planet need those skills of conversation and that memory of migration. Conversation is quite literally about spending time together, turning toward the other, seeking deeper insight and greater compassion. Conversation is a key tool of justice, and it was the primary goal of Occupy. We are meant to occupy this land, here and around the globe, in deep conversation that leads to conversion of heart and mind and practice. We have been anointed for that work, and we're sent to engage our neighbors in the conversation of life together. We will find ourselves changed, transformed, converted even, and turned again toward the dream of God. The diocesan office in Ocean Beach has a neighbor who finds our ministry there obnoxious and inconvenient. He hates the parking lot between us. The people who are served there with meals and medical care, showers and mail service offend him, or their noise and refuse do. I've heard stories about this man since I arrived, but I haven't yet met this neighbor. But on Friday, he agreed to sit down and have lunch. I imagine that our conversation will include plenty of lament and complaint, for he feels unjustly served by our presence. I hope and pray that we can find some glimmer of what justice for all might look like. We're going to occupy a lunch table together next week. And it just might start some solidarity for the journey. When we remember that we are loved by God and at least a few other people, it's possible to start abiding with our neighbors, even if we can't abide them just yet. We can occupy the land, abiding together, even imperfectly, and we can keep moving toward that more perfect dream of God's justice. I leave you with an exercise for occupying the land. It's from Dostoevsky in The Brothers Karamazov. Love all creation, the whole of it and every grain of sand. Love every leaf, every ray of God's light. Love the animals, love the plants, love everything. You will perceive the divine mystery in all things, and once you have perceived it, you will begin to comprehend it ceaselessly, more and more every day. And you will at last come to love the whole world with an abiding, universal love.